Welcome to FOB TV, the future of business. I'm your host, Kevin Benedict. I'm a futurist and partner here at TCS, and I want to thank each of you for being with us today. My guest, I'm so excited because not only is he a brilliant author in his own rank, he's also very difficult to schedule because of his busy schedule. And I think maybe since we talked, I think I had COVID, my family had COVID, I think you had COVID. So all these things played their role in it. And but anyway, I'm just thrilled to have you, Olivier. Let me make sure I get this right. Lepinoy. Yes. Olivier, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me. Thank you.
Now, Olivier is a member of Autodesk business development team, and he focuses on architecture, engineering, and construction, or the AEC industries. He also considers himself a cultural architect, and we're going to talk about that here at some length. His current efforts are focused on helping architecture, engineering, and construction companies explore and build new kinds of business models. Now, before Olivier joined Autodesk, he was an architect for Vinci. He worked for Accenture and IBM. He's one of the co-authors of 2 acclaimed books about innovation in construction. Olivier also holds 2 master's degrees in civil engineering and earthquake engineering. He is also a licensed architect and an urban designer. Wow, that's a mouthful. And I'm so excited again that you're here today. Where are you calling in from today, Olivier?
Paris, France.
What's the weather like?
It's great. It's great. It looks like it's the summer. It's not the summer. It's the summer. I don't know. But the weather is great.
So Paris, of course, is in France, and I'm in Idaho, but our city is Boise, or La Bois, meaning the woods.
And you have the Eiffel Tower in your background.
Look at there, right outside my window.
Crazy.
So one of my favorite philosophers, Olivier, an urbanist, also a cultural theorist, is Professor Paul Virilio. I have 6 of his books in my personal library. And he noted in his books that the speed at which something happens may change its essential nature. And that which moves with speed quickly comes to dominate that which is slower. Do you agree or disagree, and why?
I agree. It would be difficult to disagree with this guy. It makes me think of digital transformation, of course. I don't know, I am the only one. Maybe people listening to this podcast will think otherwise, will think of other ideas or parallels, but it makes me think of digital transformation. The fact that things go so fast, sometimes also people lose sight of the big picture. Maybe things are going too fast. There's too much focus on technology instead of thinking about other things like business models, cultures, the mindset, roles and responsibilities, all of these things that companies need to take care of, also for a good digital transformation. We've been in this movement of digital transformation for a long time now, and we've seen digital transformation accelerate across industries. At Autodesk, this is also what we call convergence, the convergence between the manufacturing industry and the construction industry. But you could also speak about convergence with other industries like the media and entertainment industry that Autodesk also covers. So that's my first reaction to this, but maybe I should return the question. What do you think?
Well, I think in just about every society, we're seeing a separation or a divergence between different segments of our populations, where some significant portion of our populations in our countries feel left behind, and that they have a culture or a tradition that is falling behind the rapid acceleration of digital transformation. And it's creating issues and challenges in all of our societies, in our politics, in everything, because the culture or the traditional culture is just being pulled apart. And it really is that it takes a lot of effort to stay current with the speed in which things are evolving. And many people are very uncomfortable with change and the pace of change.
I agree.
Autodesk, where you work with the largest architectural firms, engineering and construction companies all around the world. Talk to me about what is the state of digital transformation in those industries.
The state of digital transformation is very variable depending on what you look at. So there's A, architecture, there's E, engineering, and there's construction. First of all, you have various things happening in these three sub-segments. Digital transformation is happening very strongly now in construction. It used to happen a lot in engineering and architecture. Now that's the turn of construction. And also, this is very variable depending on where you look at, North America, Europe, Asia. Of course, there's the Middle East. I'm lucky enough to work for a lot of customers across the globe, and I've been doing this for a while now, even before I joined Autodesk. So this is very hard to give an answer to this one. But I would say a lot of diversity, a lot of things happening, and I've always come back to the local things and the cultural aspect of transformation. This is about the local culture of innovation. When people ask me, what did you learn from the work that you've done for Japanese construction firms? I say to them, they are very innovative in their own way, but this has a lot to do with how innovation is managed in their country. It's about your culture and the culture of your country and how innovation is managed. We're still struggling in this industry with productivity and margins. Productivity is not as high as it should be, and the margins of the companies are very small. So this is a big obstacle that they need to overcome to transform. There's clearly a need to transform. It is clearly urgent because of the pressure that is put on the planet and sustainability. But still, compared to other industries in construction, it's very hard to find money to invest in anything. Every BCG or McKinsey report tells us that we are the least digitized industry among other industries. When I say we, I don't speak about Autodesk. I speak about the construction industry. So a lot of obstacles. When we speak more, you will understand that I'm trying to look at the glass half full instead of looking at the glass half empty. We cannot just look at it this way and look at the status quo and try to move forward. I've spent a lot of time trying to identify pockets of excellence, pockets of innovation, especially in the big companies in AEC. I can say it now. It's about the fact that most of them, if not all of them, are now trying to build their own digital platforms. And it's a big change because in the past, we were looking at an industry where technology companies were offering solutions, digital solutions on the platform, and AEC firms were consuming those solutions, were buying those solutions. Now this is still the case, but now they're also trying to build their own platforms. Because they feel that they need to move more strategically to keep their competitive advantage.
Olivier, I've always seen that industries that are kind of project-based, where they have contracts and there's so many variables that can impact their profit margins, it's so difficult for them to plan ahead because every project, they don't know if there's enough margin to include innovation. And so innovation is just a struggle in those kind of industries there.
We are looking at large companies that we respect, that I respect a lot and that we respect a lot, but they are trying to survive. Yeah. I have to say, if I'm honest.
Absolutely. Olivier, you recently wrote that the future of AEC, architecture, engineering, and construction will be radically different. What's causing that change?
Yeah, what's causing that change is the fact that, as I explained, companies are now building their own platforms, and it is going to completely change their ecosystem and their supply chain. As we know, and as we've observed in many other industries than the construction industry, in a platform economy, your customer can become your partner, your supplier can become your customer. everything is upside down. And value delivered is not the value delivered in the old world. So in this industry, in the construction industry, this is only the beginning of this. It probably started 5-7 years ago, really small things. Now we see a lot of companies building their own platforms. In the future, there will be competitions between platforms, and this will change everything. This is happening now. So I'm not speaking about a future that is going to happen in 10 years. This is already the case because the AEC industry, the architecture, engineering, construction industry is very complex, very fragmented, very local. You have a lot of very small businesses, very small and medium-sized companies, also very large companies. So within this current state of the industry, a lot of things are happening. I'm not saying that they're good or bad, but they might be very different in the future.
Interesting. So around these platforms, I imagine ecosystems form because I could see large customers asking all of the construction companies and their suppliers to all participate on a platform. And then once everyone is on the platform and their operations and schedules and accountability and payment systems, everything starts to be built into these platforms. That means there's a lot of data on those platforms, and that could likely change a lot of things as well. Yeah, including business models, I would imagine. Talk to us about what you're seeing out there.
Yeah, this is always the same in every industry, and I think we see the emergence of this in the construction industry. You're not going to be surprised by what I'm going to say. First, I think companies understand that there's a lot of value in the data that they have, and they have the feeling that they sit on a treasure. They have a treasure inside their company because of all of the data that they have or that they manage. And their first reaction is to say, oh, I'm going to keep this data. This is a great treasure. There's a lot of value here for me and for my company. And they start this, they have this, their instinct is telling them we should build a platform. They start with the IT aspect of the platform. So they ask the big technology companies to build platforms for them or with them in various ways. But usually at the beginning of this, they do this because they want more collaboration internally. They want to modernize the workflows, all of those things. But they don't have a clear answer in terms of new services that they could offer to their ecosystem. They're making baby steps in this direction, the new services. And sometimes they think that they're going to be able to sell their data. Of course, they're not going to be able to sell their data. No one sells anyone's data. You keep your data and you sell services. What I've observed also across the globe with large companies is once they have the beginning of a platform or several pieces of a platform, and once they have a certain idea of the new services that they could sell internally and externally, still they do not understand the business model of the platform. So they don't know what to do to run the platform the best way. They're gonna run the platform with their current business model. This was probably the case a year ago. Now we see more and more companies working on their business model, and I'm pushing them to work on their business models before they start the IT work. Because of course also the business model aspect is not too expensive to work on. The IT aspect is much more expensive to work on. So it's much safer to work on the business model. Of course, the business model can be changed easily, while the technology aspect of the platform is much more difficult to adapt. You're looking at names of the largest engineering firms and construction firms in the world globally. You have companies from Europe, from North America, from the Middle East, from India, from Japan. If I go back to the basics, I'm trying to show that companies are playing offense more and more. We are struggling with the fact that a lot of conversations in this industry are conversations that are playing defense conversations. Only the basics. the bottom line: productivity improvement, cost savings, and business optimization. This is good, and this is essential, and this is needed, highly needed, as I explained. But you need to play in both fields. You need to play offense also. And this is interesting because when you speak to companies that are not very mature, sometimes they think that offense is not for them and they can only do defense, big or small, but they can only do defense. But companies that are more mature understand that actually defense and offense it requires the same skills, the same resources, the same technology also. So here are the examples of companies playing offense. And as I always explain, cases that I found that are always publicly available to try to change the mindset of the people in this industry. So this is why I put them on social media, on LinkedIn, 2 pages. One features, as you see, new venture and anything that is about growth and growth initiatives called hyperconstruction. On the right, you have the same, but internally, the things that they do to transform culturally and in terms of their organization. You have here hyperconstruction season 1. I'm going to start season 2 probably in 2 weeks. So a mix of companies that are from the US, Europe, as I said, India, Japan. And it's very simple. You have the traditional on the left side of the image, and on the right side of the image, something that they do that is outside of the ordinary. Usually it's a platform, and it doesn't change them completely, of course. It changes part of their business. It can start very small, but it can become bigger. Still, it's not going to completely change their business, but this is something very, very new that they do. Sometimes it is about acquiring a startup and putting the startup in their normal solution portfolio. Sometimes this is the opposite. This is something that is inside the company, something good that goes outside of the company. They create a separate company, like Oris for Allseam. Allseam is this cement and concrete company. Or if you take Arcadis Gen, and for this large engineering firm, Arcadis. Again, season 1. I'm going to start season 2 in 2 weeks with, I hope, 1 case per week. And then here you focus on some of the things that they do that is very much out of the ordinary. A lot of corporate venture initiatives from there's Cemex, then you have DPR. DPR is a very famous construction firm based in the US. What else? Not McDonald Ventures, Suffolk Technology. Suffolk is also a US company. Schneider Electric Ventures. So no surprise, a lot of corporate ventures initiatives, but also things that are about open innovation and changing the mindset of the company internally, done by Vinci, things done by Ferrovial. Ferrovial is this large construction company headquartered in Spain, a global company. Saint-Gobain is another French one, but you also have US companies on those slides. Kone for the elevators, also doing things that are very much out of the ordinary. So that's a sort of a long answer to your question, but that's how I look at the world now.
Oh, that's fascinating. Yeah, there's a lot of ventures being internal ventures to support innovation, either inside or outside. I see a lot of that. A lot of platforms, as you talked about, where they're building their own platforms. So fascinating. That's just a powerful representation of transformation within those industries. Thanks for showing us that, Olivier.
No, you're welcome. This is, as I explained, this is about changing the mindset of the industry and the leader, for everyone to look at the glass half full instead of complaining all the time about the fact that we are so late and so bad with everything. It makes me laugh because we are not so bad with everything. Yeah. We are just highly fragmented, very local. And I'm going to show for season 2 examples that very few people know. I'm going to show examples from China. In China, you have engineering firms that are way larger than any other engineering firms we know. They have construction firms that are way larger than any other construction firms we know. And they're also exactly doing the same. They are building their own platforms, collecting data, sometimes acquiring data, designing new business models, designing new services. changing their organizations internally, trying to make more money, trying to increase their margins. I want to say also that I'm not saying this is a box that I open and I have the answer inside the box. A lot of this is very unknown and very complex to understand and to look at. I'm a big believer that transformation is very much a black box. In any company, the way the company transforms is in the end of 10 people. You see what I mean? The top management and probably some executives or directors of business units. And most of the rest of the company follows. This is not always a top-down approach. It can be a bottom-up approach to transformation, but still, it's extremely difficult to understand why companies do what they do.
So on that note of talking about data and new kinds of services that you've demonstrated or represented there, you recently wrote, data will be the new raw material. Firms and organizations will buy, sell, and trade data. What do you mean by that in the context of AEC?
I said that and I wrote that because I want to make sure that everyone understands that data will be at the center of every business now. Again, that's true for a lot of industries, but that's also true for construction. And it needs to be said very clearly and very strongly. Because I'm speaking about an industry that is very traditional in its mindset and in its operations. So it needs to be said clearly that data will be at the center of everything. And I'm also a big believer that data is already at the center of everything. That's what I call the invisible revolution. People say that this industry doesn't change so much because if you go to a construction site in Paris or elsewhere now, and if you go to a construction site 10 years ago, things didn't change so much. You don't see robots everywhere. You don't see drones. You don't see exoskeletons. You don't see a lot of high-tech stuff everywhere. This is still very traditional. This is still handwork, not always, but this is very manual work. But the real changes are invisible to the eye. They are about the data exchange between the companies working, the services exchange, also the contracting models between the companies, even the business models of the companies. So a lot of things that my grandfather wouldn't understand if he goes to a construction site. He would say, "Oh, that's the same as 50 years ago," but that's not the same. And the reason why I'm speaking about data so much is to show that really things are changing. That's very simple. I also have a framework for this. I can show you another image for everyone to understand what I mean by that. This is this framework that I created and printed in a book. It is a way to look at the construction industry and the ecosystem from the point of view of data only. And as you can see, you have sort of 5 families of companies, the originators, the providers, the aggregators, the consumers, and the controllers. Purely in terms of communication and marketing, this is only using the language of data to speak about the construction industry. But it goes deeper than that. It's about understanding that companies now can be other things than what they are now. When large companies or mid-sized companies, they see this, when they understand the framework, they understand that they can escape the prison that they're in. Because as we know, most of the time when a company tries to transform, they are a little bit prisoner of the position that they have in the ecosystem. And if they're afraid that if they change, their customer will not understand, or their client will not understand, or their supplier will not understand. They're afraid to break something in their current operations. And I'm telling them with this framework that they are already in the future. A company already design, provides raw material or building products or uses equipment. They also provide data. The aggregators are the same. Every company is a little bit of an aggregator today, like the general contractors of today. Same for consumers. Companies are already consuming the data created by other companies in their ecosystem. So this is the future that is already here. And what is very pleasant is to see that companies in AEC, they now use the framework without me to change their mindset. What I really like is when they come back to me and say to me, we understand that we can reinvent ourselves. We can become someone else as a company. So it is about their perception of themselves.
In tomorrow's world, businesses will orchestrate resources within a network. What will be important will be external interactions. The focus will be on the value delivered to the ecosystem. Can you tell us about that?
Really looking at the industry as a platform industry. This is not exactly the case now. In the future, when we'll have more and more of the platforms, I showed with the slide before, the small initiatives or the small or the big initiatives, but they are just, when we will see more and more platforms, we will see the changes that you described. And we will see what happens in other industries. The fact that all of a sudden, a technology company that you consider your supplier or your technology supplier might become your partner to build the platform, to jointly go to market with the platform. You will see very easily your customer become your supplier or your partner. So this will change everything. And I think the big companies are in a better position to embrace this change just because they are big and they have enough experience to look at the future. This might be more difficult for the mid-sized and small companies, but this is not very sure. We are at a point where we see that a lot of companies believe that they need to own the platform, as if owning the platform would be a guarantee to survive in the future. This is also because everyone is reading the same books, everyone is reading the same articles and listen to the same thought leaders. But the fact is, maybe you can keep your business as it is, collaborate well with other partners that own platforms. And if you are strong enough, I would say vertically, in some point solutions, you can be all right in the future without owning the platform. But we are at a time now where everyone believes that they need to own the platform and be the aggregator for everyone else.
When you have data that gives you an advantage, I call it advantage times an advantage, because if you're an early innovator, then you're able to collect data from those early innovations that no one else has. That data then gives you additional advantages because you know what works and what doesn't work. Is we can see that in the automobile industry or the ecosystem around Tesla cars, electric cars. They are many years ahead of other startups when it comes to the amount of information that they've collected and learned from. So they're already applying algorithms to learned lessons that no one else has. So it's that advantage over an advantage because you're an early adopter. So, I mean, everybody's trying to get that.
Yeah, and also with the Tesla case, this is interesting because they started from scratch somehow. So they could invent a business model to go with their business, which is not exactly the case in construction. We didn't see a Tesla emerge in construction. Everyone claims that maybe Amazon will be the big disruptor or Google or someone else or Tesla. I don't think that's the case now. I cannot predict the future, but what I can say is large companies who already operate with several business models are in a better position just because they understand the concept of business model. They know how to run one, to run a second one, and maybe a third one, a fourth one, and some of them have more than 20 business models working at the same time. So they have a way to look at the future that is very different compared to an engineering firm that does the basics of engineering, or an architectural firm that does the basics of design, or a construction firm that does the basics of just building buildings.
Oh, absolutely. So in summary here, if I look at my notes, The future of construction will include new business models, new contracting mechanisms, a change in skill sets required to run new business models, new processes and new standards will be needed, new kinds of organizations, new types of partnerships and alliances. So all these changes that we've kind of talked about and hinted about here, what is the motivating factor for companies needing or jumping into those new concepts, ideas, and frameworks?
I think you have two motivations that are at sort of at the two extreme of the spectrum. You have the urgency to change because we cannot go on like this, as I said at the beginning, with the small margins that we have and the pressure on the environment. Things need to change. When it comes to construction and the environment, everyone speaks about circular economy, circular construction, and new business models, supposedly circular business models. But that's sort of the main reason why everyone needs to move and wants to do something different. The opposite end of the spectrum, inspiration, and the fact that companies, they sort of copy what other big companies do. This started 5 years ago when some companies, you have this French company called Bouygues Construction, started to build its own platform. The beginning of it, Lendlease in Australia started the same. Vinci in France, US companies, Takenaka in Japan. So those big names that people pay attention to, when people understood that there's the beginning of them building their own platforms, it created a competition. And now everyone is inspired by what the other leaders are doing. So this creates this movement. But again, this is sort of just the emerging part of the iceberg, the visible part of the iceberg. A lot of other things are invisible that are very much internal inside the companies. All of the organizational change, the new roles and responsibilities. I wish I could describe all of this in an article or in a book, but I don't think this is feasible. This is way too complex.
Yeah.
Maybe through one or two examples, but I mean, it would require to interview the chief transformation officers of these big companies or the chief digital officers of these big companies, and I doubt that they want to speak very openly about what they do because this is highly strategic for them.
So, Olivier, what's so interesting is I remember if we go back even 15 years, almost pre our phones, right? So before we all were carrying these pocket computers, if you would, people didn't even have a vision for what data could be used for. But I think especially in the younger generations, as they come up, having never experienced a world without data available, I mean, their sleep patterns, where they rent an apartment, how they get from your apartment to a restaurant to meet friends, everything is being done on here with data. So I think as these newer generations join those companies, they're going to assume, why don't we have data from the job site? Why don't we have information that updates automatically the progress of our subcontractors?
Yeah.
We should just always have data just like we do on our phones.
Yeah, I agree completely. And I'm observing this most of the time. I'm speaking to the C-level people in these companies that are not so young, if I can say. But still, I have also feedback from people that are younger, and I'm observing exactly what you described. Also, this young generation, they don't want to have the defense conversation so much. It is much easier for them to have the offense conversations that I described earlier. This is also something that I try to explain with the analogy with Facebook or Instagram. It is like big companies in construction are just like us with social media. They have a platform, they have platforms available, there's technology available, but the way they use technology can be completely different from one company to another, depending on their maturity, the way they manage innovation, the way they manage their business. So take individuals. the way I use Instagram is very different from the way my father uses Instagram. It's very different from the way my young cousin uses Instagram. My father uses Instagram as Facebook to share pictures of his life, while my young cousin, she makes money on Instagram. So, and this is sort of the analogy that I use to explain that large companies, they play defense first with the platform, but after a while, but it can take 5 years, but after a while, they understand that they can play offense with the same platform, actually, with the same technology, not really the same, but almost the same. And they understand that they can make money and they can transform their business. And again, this is going to take more than just a platform, but this is a change that is irreversible.
Olivier, I want to thank you so much for taking your evening to educate us and share your experiences and insight from Paris. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Kevin. It was a pleasure.